It was supposed to be easy, casual, even friendly, but instead it turned into something no one in that studio was prepared for. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's get back to the video. What happens when one of Hollywood's most recognizable comedians walks into what should be a relaxed interview and suddenly finds himself under attack? This is the explosive exchange that stunned viewers and ended with Jim Carrey walking straight off the View stage, leaving everyone scrambling to process what just happened. The studio lights were blazing that Tuesday morning as Jim Carrey settled into his chair, wearing that familiar smile audiences had trusted for decades. He was there to promote his latest project, expecting light conversation, a few jokes, and maybe a nostalgic nod to his iconic roles. Instead, the atmosphere shifted almost immediately, and the tone turned sharp in a way that felt impossible to ignore. Joy Behar leaned forward. Behar. Her expression already signaling trouble, her voice carrying an edge that cut through the room. "So, Jim," she began, "let's talk about your recent comments about the entertainment industry. Some people are calling them unhinged." The word landed hard, and the mood changed instantly. Jim's smile tightened, but he stayed composed. "Well, Joy," he replied carefully, "when you've been in this business as long as I have, you start to see things differently. You notice the machinery behind the magic, and sometimes that can be eye-opening." His tone was calm, but the message was clear. "Eye-opening or delusional?" Joy snapped back without hesitation. "Because to a lot of people it sounds like you've completely lost touch with reality." The tension spread fast, and the other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whoopi Goldberg adjusted her posture, clearly sensing where this was headed, while Sarah Haynes avoided eye contact, flipping through her notes. Sonny Hostin raised an eyebrow, visibly surprised by how aggressive the exchange had become. Jim's expression hardened. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice firm. "Are we having an interview or an interrogation? Because I thought I was here to talk about my work, not be psychoanalyzed by someone who's never walked in my shoes." The studio fell quiet. "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Spare us the victim act. You come on these shows. You make bizarre statements about Hollywood conspiracies and spiritual awakenings, and then you get upset when people call you out." Her tone was sharp, almost mocking. "Bizarre statements," Jim repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Joy, I've been honest about my experiences. If that honesty makes you uncomfortable, maybe the issue isn't with what I'm saying." His words hung heavy in the air. Joy leaned back, a smug look crossing her face. "Honest? You've claimed celebrities are puppets in some grand scheme. You talk about ego death and cosmic consciousness like you're some kind of guru. Do you realize how that sounds to normal people?" The jab was unmistakable. "Normal people," Jim shot back, hurt flashing across his face. "With all due respect, Joy, I don't think you get to decide what's normal for anyone. I've had experiences that changed how I see life, fame, and what truly matters. If sharing that makes me sound crazy to you, then so be it." His voice carried conviction. By now, the studio audience was completely silent, fully aware they were witnessing something far more intense than a typical daytime exchange. Cameramen adjusted angles, capturing every second as the conversation escalated beyond anything planned. But Joy wasn't backing down. "Jim, you made millions entertaining people, and now you want to bite the hand that fed you. You want to tell everyone that the industry that made you rich and famous is corrupt?" Her words were pointed, accusatory. "I never said corrupt," Jim replied, steady but strained. "But there are unhealthy aspects. The obsession with validation, treating people like commodities, forcing images that aren't authentic. Is it really wrong to talk about that?" His frustration was obvious. Joy interrupted sharply, dismissing his point entirely. "What's wrong is pretending you're a victim when you've benefited more than most people ever will. You've made a fortune making people laugh, and now you act like Hollywood is some kind of prison." The tension thickened. Sarah Haynes finally tried to step in, her voice calm but urgent. "Maybe we could talk about Jim's upcoming project. I think the audience would love to hear," but Joy cut her off instantly. "No!" Joy snapped, turning towards Sarah. "This matters. Jim is spreading anti-industry sentiment, and viewers deserve to know where this is coming from." The control in the room slipped even further. Jim leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "Conspiracy theories," he said slowly. "I've talked about realizing that fame and money didn't fulfill me. I've talked about finding meaning beyond success. How is that a conspiracy?" His patience was thinning. Joy fired back, quoting critics directly. "You're implying there's something sinister about an industry that employs millions. You're feeding narratives about control and manipulation." Her voice took on a prosecutorial tone. "You're putting words in my mouth," Jim said, frustration rising. "I never talked about mind control. I talked about emptiness, about chasing things that didn't satisfy me. If that threatens you, that's not my problem." His voice echoed through the studio. Joy laughed, but it wasn't warm. "Threatens me? I've seen celebrities go through phases for decades. Most don't do it on national television while criticizing the industry that made them. Relevant?" The room felt frozen. The tension was now unmistakable, and Jim looked like he was reaching a breaking point. He took a breath, eyes locked on Joy, and spoke quietly but with intensity. "I came here for a real conversation about life, not to be painted as some delusional has-been." His words cut deep, and the confrontation was only getting started. Jim's words lingered in the air, and the silence that followed felt heavy enough to press down on everyone in the room. Joy didn't blink, didn't soften, and didn't retreat for even a second. "I'm not painting you as anything," Joy replied coolly. "I'm asking why you think it's appropriate to use your platform to spread negativity about an industry that's given you everything." Her voice carried that familiar mix of confidence and challenge. "Given me everything," Jim repeated, his voice rising despite his effort to stay controlled. "Do you have any idea what it's like to lose yourself? In a persona so completely that you forget who you really are? To have millions love an image of you while you feel completely hollow inside?" His words landed with visible force. "Oh, boo-hoo!" Joy shot back with mock sympathy. "Poor rich actor having an existential crisis. You signed up for this life, Jim. Nobody forced you to become a celebrity." A few gasps rippled through the audience. That comment struck deep, and it showed immediately. Jim's face flushed, his composure cracking for the first time as the weight of the moment settled in. He stared at Joy, breathing heavier, the room frozen around him. "Nobody forced me," Jim said slowly, his voice colder than before. "You're right. But nobody warned me I'd be sitting across from people who take pleasure in tearing others down for daring to grow." The words felt deliberate, measured, and sharp. "I'm not tearing you down," Joy replied, her eyes narrowing. "I'm asking you to take responsibility for your words. There's a difference." Her tone was firm, almost defensive now. "Responsibility." Jim let out a short, bitter laugh. "I've taken more responsibility in the last few years than I did in decades before that. I've examined my choices, my mistakes, my patterns. What I won't do is apologize for being honest." His voice didn't waver. Whoopi Goldberg finally stepped in, her tone calmer but serious. "Jim, when you have a platform like yours, your words carry weight. People listen." The room shifted slightly as attention turned to her. "And that's exactly why I tell the truth," Jim replied respectfully. "I'm not telling people how to live. I'm sharing my own journey, nothing more." His voice softened, but his resolve didn't. Joy jumped back in immediately. "Your journey affects others. When you talk about the industry being fake or unhealthy, you're not just talking about yourself. You're affecting real people's livelihoods." Her words were sharp and unrelenting. "What real people?" Jim asked, his patience clearly wearing thin again. "The executives who treat artists like products? The agents who care more about commissions than clients? The publicists who sell fake personas?" His tone was pointed. "All the crew members, writers, producers, and workers who depend on this industry," Joy snapped back. "When you paint Hollywood negatively, you diminish their work too." Her voice rose as she spoke. Jim shook his head slowly. "You're deliberately misunderstanding me. I've never attacked the hardworking people. I'm criticizing a system that values profit over people and image over truth." His frustration was undeniable. Joy leaned forward again, her voice taking on that familiar prosecutorial edge. "But isn't it hypocritical to take money from that system while condemning it? You benefit from it while attacking it." The accusation hung in the air. The studio went dead silent, the hum of the cameras the only sound left. Jim looked at Joy for a long moment, as if deciding whether the conversation was worth continuing. "You know what's hypocritical?" Jim said finally, his voice calm but cutting, pretending that authenticity is an attack. "You've seen what this industry does to people. You've watched talent lose themselves, and yet you defend it simply because it's been good to you." His words landed hard. Joy's face tightened. "I'm defending an industry that provides jobs and entertainment. Maybe successful people should show gratitude instead of complaining about privileged lives." Her tone was sharp, almost scolding. "There it is," Jim said quietly, a sad smile crossing his face. "Gratitude. You think success means silence, that because I've done well I should stop talking, but success without fulfillment is just a nicer kind of misery." His voice carried quiet intensity. "Oh, please," Joy rolled. Her eyes. "You sound like a self-help book, written by someone who's never had a real problem." The insult cut through the room like a blade. Jim froze, his entire posture stiffening. "Never had a real problem?" he asked softly. "Do you know anything about my childhood, growing up in poverty, watching my father struggle just to keep food on the table?" His voice trembled with restrained emotion. Joy hesitated for a brief moment, then recovered. "I'm not diminishing your past, Jim, but you've had wealth and resources for decades. Whatever you faced back then, you've had every opportunity to address it." Her words felt dismissive. "Resources don't erase trauma," Jim snapped back. "You can't buy self-worth. You can't purchase healing. Money doesn't fill the void left by years of pretending to be someone you're not." His voice rang through the studio. Sarah Haynes tried again to soften the moment. "Maybe we could talk about how this self-reflection has influenced your creative work now." Her attempt felt desperate, but Jim didn't look away from Joy. "You want to know what I've learned?" he said firmly. "The people most threatened by authenticity are usually the ones clinging hardest to their own masks." The words landed with uncomfortable precision. Joy's jaw tightened. "Are you psychoanalyzing me now? You're not a therapist." Her voice edged toward irritation. "And you're not a critic of personal growth," Jim shot back. "Yet you've spent this entire segment tearing apart my honesty." His patience was clearly gone. The tension in the studio reached a breaking point, thick and suffocating. Sunny Hostin avoided eye contact. Whoopi shook her head slowly, and the crew stood frozen, aware that the interview had completely derailed. And Joy, instead of pulling back, leaned in for one more blow, setting the stage for what came next. "You know what I think, Jim?" Joy said, her voice dripping with condescension as she leaned back. "I think you're going through a phase. I think you'll come back to reality eventually, and when you do, you'll realize all this spiritual talk was just another act." The words hung in the air like poison. "Another act," Jim repeated softly, his expression shifting from anger to something closer to disbelief. What if I told you that all those characters I played, all the performances that made people laugh, those were the acts? He paused, eyes locked on Joy. What if the person sitting here right now is the real me? The room felt frozen. Joy shrugged, dismissive and cold. Then the real you is a lot less entertaining than the fake one. A sharp gasp rippled through the audience as the statement landed with brutal clarity. Jim went completely still, the silence stretching painfully long. When he finally looked up, there was a calm in his eyes that felt final, almost unsettling. You just proved everything. I've been saying, he said slowly, you just showed why people in this industry burn out, self-destruct, and disappear. His voice was steady, but every word cut. Joy tried to interrupt, but Jim raised his hand. No, this matters. You just told a human being that their authentic self has less value than a performance. The other host stared at Joy now, visibly shaken by the direction the exchange had taken. Whoopi shook her head. Sarah looked distressed, and even the crew seemed unsure of what to do next. Joy's confidence wavered for the first time. I didn't mean it like that, she said, but the conviction was gone. You meant it exactly like that, Jim replied firmly. And that belief, that people are only valuable when they entertain you, that's the toxicity I walked away from. His words felt like a verdict. Joy's face flushed as she tried to regain ground. You're being dramatic. I was pointing out that fans love your comedy, not these philosophical speeches. Her voice was sharp but defensive now. My experiences are not rambling, Jim said, a tight smile crossing his face. I shared trauma, growth, and self-reflection, and you reduced it to entertainment value. He reached up and unclipped the microphone from his jacket. This is why I don't do many interviews, Jim continued, standing slowly. Because vulnerability gets mocked, growth gets dismissed, and authenticity gets treated like a flaw. The studio audience was completely silent. Joy stood as well, her voice rising. You came on this show knowing there would be tough questions. Her tone sounded desperate. Tough questions? Jim laughed, but there was no humor in it. You attacked my mental state, mocked my past, and told me I wasn't valuable unless I performed. His words echoed through the studio. Whoopi tried one last time. Jim, let's just reset. Her voice carried genuine concern. Jim turned to her, respectfully. Whoopi, I respect you deeply, but I won't sit here and be torn apart under the label of journalism. His gaze returned to Joy. This isn't journalism, this is bullying. The word landed hard. Joy bristled. You're being unprofessional. This is live television. Her voice was sharp and strained. Jim paused, sadness crossing his face. Do you know what's truly unprofessional? Inviting someone on under false pretenses and tearing them down. He turned toward the cameras, addressing viewers directly. This is exactly what I've been talking about. His voice was calm but resolute. Some audience members lifted their phones, recording what they knew was an unprecedented moment. Joy tried one final time to regain control. You're running away, she snapped. Jim stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one last time. Walking away from toxicity isn't running away, he said clearly. It's self-respect. The words hit with undeniable force. He looked into the camera again. If you're trying to grow, don't let people like this convince you that authenticity makes you weak. His voice carried sincerity and finality. You can't just leave, Joy shouted, her control completely gone. Jim didn't turn around this time. What's unprofessional is attacking someone's humanity, he called back as he walked off the stage. The studio was left stunned, Joy standing frozen, her expression unreadable. The cameras kept rolling as Whoopi struggled to regain order, but the damage was done. Viewers had watched authenticity collide with hostility in real time, and the fallout was impossible to ignore. Some would call Jim dramatic. Others would say he exposed something ugly hiding in plain sight. But one thing was undeniable. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a moment that forced everyone watching to ask an uncomfortable question about entertainment, power, and who gets to decide what makes a person valuable. And whether people liked it or not, that question wasn't going away anytime soon.